Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Noelle, and in today's video I'm going to be sharing with you guys a thrift flip of some kids table and chairs that I picked up from Facebook Marketplace. And I've been working on my boys' playroom and just really trying to just transform the space. So this is the final project that I'm going to be doing for that space, and then next week I'm going to be uploading the playroom makeover video, so I'm really excited for that. But I wanted to transform this table and chairs that I found on Facebook Marketplace into something that was a little bit more elevated and high-end looking and just really flowed with the look of the room a little bit better. So this is what I'm starting out with, and I'm going to go ahead and jump into this transformation. So the first thing I wanted to do was to get rid of this orangey finish and get these pieces back down to their raw wood look. Make it a little bit easier, I went ahead and took the chairs apart, and it was super easy because there were only a couple of screws holding it together. So I started by sanding down the table and chairs, and I used a 60 grit sandpaper to get all of the paint and stain off. And then I wanted to go in and smooth out the wood, so I used a 220 grit to do that. Once I got it all sanded down, I went in with this special walnut stain to add some warmth to it, but to not add the orangey tint that we started out with. I just applied the stain to the table with an old rag. And then for the chairs, I decided to dilute the stain a little bit with some mineral spirits to lighten it up a little bit, because it was pulling a little bit darker than I wanted it to on the legs of the table. So I think adding that mineral spirits made the stain just the right color for the chair legs. To add some durability to the table, I went ahead and applied a couple coats of this polyacrylic, and I wanted to use polyacrylic because this one is not gonna get yellowy over time, and I just applied it to the top of the table because that's the only part that I'm really concerned about getting wear and tear. I couldn't sand down the chair seats because they weren't wooden, so I'm just going to spray paint them with this beige paint that I had on hand, since some of the seat will be visible in my design. Next, I wanted to create a new back for the chairs because I felt like the old back was a little too small and it wasn't going to work for what my plans were for these chairs. So I'm just cutting down a piece of wood that I had on hand that I thought was a good width for the chair backs so that they would fit perfectly between the side wood pieces of the chair. Once I cut my wood pieces, it was time to reassemble the chairs. So I'm just going in and screwing these screws back in and putting it all together. To add my new back, I slid it into place where I wanted it to be at, and then drilled a hole through the side of the wood pieces and into the new back so that the wood wouldn't split whenever I screwed the pieces together. So once I had the holes drilled, I just screwed the pieces in place, and I would usually want the screw to be more discreet, but I'm going to be covering this up, so I didn't really care. I really wanted to elevate the look of these chairs, and was really inspired by these McGee & Co chairs and really liked the warmth that the leather adds. So I went to Hobby Lobby and picked up this faux leather to wrap around the back and the seat of my chairs. I measured out the back and the seat and went ahead and made a pattern. You always want to make sure that you lay out your pattern on your fabric fully before cutting so that you can find the layout that uses the most of your fabric. So it's kind of like playing Tetris. I ended up not having enough fabric for one of the seats, so I plan on going back later to get a little bit more. Next, I'm going to use some frog tape to keep my pattern in place on my fabric. And this is really great stuff for so many things other than painting. Now that the pattern is secure, I'm going to start cutting it out. Okay, so now I'm going to start attaching the faux leather to the chair. So I'm going to start with the seat back, and I'm just going to wrap the bottom and the top pieces of material around first, and I'm going to pin it in place. To secure these two pieces together, I'm going to sew them, and I didn't have any brown thread, but you won't see this part anyway, so I'm just going to use what I have on hand. So I'm sewing it together in the middle, and then I'm going to sew it on either side to make sure that it doesn't slip around or move and it stays in place. And I'm just doing a couple of stitches on either side. Once I've got that secure, I'm going to wrap the side pieces around, and I wanted the back of the chairs to be really pretty too, so to do that I'm going to add a little tie detail on the back. So I'm just pinning it in place, and now I'm going to use an X-Acto knife to poke a hole through both layers of the faux leather since they are overlapped in the back. Next, I'm making a hole beside the previous hole in the other side of the piece of leather. Then I'm going to go back in with scissors to make the hole a little bit bigger. I still want it to be a really snug fit, so I'm not going to make it too big, but just so that it's not too difficult to push through. So now I'm just going to work this leather cord through the hole, and I'm going to use some tweezers to help pull it through since it's pretty tight. And I'm going to have to go back in a little bit with some scissors to snip away the back fabric so that I can go ahead and get this cord through. Once it's through that first hole, I'm going to lace it through the hole that's directly behind it, and I'm really trying to make sure that I keep the cord straight and not get it twisted at all. Next, I'm going to lace it through the side hole from the back so that both of the ends are coming out of the front. And I'm just going to repeat this process on the bottom section of this back piece as well, so that I have two ties in the back, and I've just centered these where I think they look nice on the back. Once I've got both pieces of leather cord laced through the holes, I'm going to make a tie by wrapping the cord around itself and looping it through the hole. I'm sure there's a name for this kind of knot, but I have no clue what it is, so if you know what kind of knot this is, then let me know in the comments below. Once I've got the seat backs wrapped in leather, I'm going to move on to covering the seat. So I originally planned to do the same wrapping technique as I used on the seat back, but I didn't have enough material, so I just decided that I would just staple it to the bottom since you wouldn't be able to see it anyways. So I'm just putting my leather over the seat and making sure that it's centered and on the edges where it should be. And then I'm going to staple it in place on the underside of the chair. After I applied the seat, I noticed that on the seat backs you can see the backing on the faux leather, so I wanted it to look less like faux leather, so I'm just going to use a lighter and burn off the little fringes from the back side of the faux leather, and then I'm going to go in with a brown marker to cover up any of the backing that is still visible. So to try and hide that backing on the faux leather fabric, I decided to try and glue the two pieces together using hot glue, but it didn't really stay in place at all, so I decided to try and use E6000 and pair that with Gorilla Glue hot glue sticks, and that really held it in place really well. And here's the finished look for this child's table and chairs. I am so happy with how these table and chairs turned out, and think they're just really going to look super cute in the boys' playroom and really elevate the space. I think that they look very similar to the McGee & Co ones that I showed you guys in the beginning, except obviously like the kids version. But I really love these, and if you guys liked it, then definitely give this video a thumbs up and subscribe, because I make videos like this every single week on home decor, DIY home decor, and making your home look high-end on a budget, so you don't want to miss out on that. So turn on your notification bell so that you don't miss out. And that's all I've got for you guys today, so I'll see you in my next one. Bye.